Hello, everybody. Welcome back to our April episode of the Interview Podcast. Today I have Denise VanLanduyt. She is the lay leader at Decatur First here in North Georgia and also an attorney. How are you doing today, Denise?
Doing fantastic. Enjoying this lovely spring weather.
I know it's getting hot. I've been taking walks to avoid the quarantine so far, but since the weather got up to 80, I've been taking less and less of them. So
Yes, it's the quarantine versus the pollen, right? So
No, yeah, I think I
they
might
never
be
go out.
developing a pollen allergy. I don't know, but I'm happy you're doing good. So, can you just start off by telling me a little bit about yourself?
Absolutely. Well, as you introduced, I am an attorney. Graduated from Syracuse University College of Law back in 2000. So I've been a member of the State Bar of Georgia for about 20 years. I have my own practice located in downtown Decatur, and we focus 100% on family law issues. And also a member of the Atlanta Legal Aid Society. I'm very active with that organization. I am the co-chair of the Service Council. And the reason I mention that is because we've been doing active work with the local churches, including Grace United Methodist Church, to set up pro bono legal clinics. I am married. My wife, Jessica, and I have been married now 14 years this March. And we are both very active members at Decatur First United Methodist Church.
All right, thank you. Okay, so when did you kind of come out? Can you tell me a little bit about that story? And, how did you deal with it in the church community? Was the church in the picture at the time? How did that go?
Sure. Well, I always question my sexuality even from a young age, but I grew up Catholic. And so a little bit of suppression there. And I also went to a very small school. There were only 92 other kids in my graduating class from high school. And so, dating wasn't really on the mind too much. We all hung out together. I didn't really come out until college, officially to my parents and my friends. But by that time, as we see with most college-aged folks, church wasn't really a part of my life for many other reasons. And so coming out sort of solidified church not really being important in my life, really just for all the contradictions I was seeing growing up. I was very involved in my youth group in the church, loved going to church, but started seeing, even at a young age, how the church didn't really live into the preaching of love than how we treated certain groups of people. So when I came out in college, going back to church at that point was absolutely a no-go. I didn't want to, and I didn't think I'd be welcome. So I just, for lack of a better explanation or wording, I wrote it off.
Okay, all right. And this might be a little bit more personal, but I do know that you are married. So do you want to share, and you did have an anniversary. So do you want to share just a little bit about how y'all met each other? I think we'd love to hear that.
Sure. So Jessica and I met about 15 years ago, and we've been married for 14 years. And we actually met online. So we were one of the earlier Match.com couples met, believe it or not. And the minute we met each other, we just hit it off. We both have a love for history, and she's just been a great inspiration in my life, and I hope I've been one for hers as well. So we're each other's best friends, and we always say, and we both believe that God made us for each other. She grew up Southern Baptist, I grew up Catholic. Somehow He managed to bring us together. So
It's a very nice story. Thank you.
absolutely.
Okay, so can you tell me a little bit about what kind of inspired you to get involved in LGBT justice, specifically in the UMC?
Sure. Well, my wife, Jessica, is the inspiration or the individual who drew me back to church. I actually gave a personal testimony at Glen Memorial United Methodist Church after the UMC Next conference that was held last May. And it really got me to thinking, she and I were early on in our relationship. We both grew up in church, and we both wanted to go back. And so to make a long story short, we landed at Decatur First United Methodist, and I sort of joke because it's literally across the street from our home, and just fell in love with the place. And we both felt super welcomed. And had that sense of church family again that we both grew up having, and didn't really know I missed it until we started attending church again.
Okay.
Well, and then what specifically got me involved in LGBT justice issues, especially in the UMC church, coming back to church, neither one of us were ignorant to the fact that there were these barriers still, that the Book of Discipline had language in it, specific language that was punitive or barring in nature around human sexuality. But again, growing up in the Catholic Church and for my wife in the Baptist Church, it was nothing new. We were just seeking a sense of community and wanting to be involved. But after the General Conference in 2016, when there was a lot of hope that we would finally break through and it failed, that hurt. It hurt really bad. I remember she and I cried in the kitchen, and I don't cry. If anybody who knows me or meets me, I'm not a crier. I cry maybe 3 times a year. But we broke down and we were crushed. And we almost left the church. It was a tough decision, but Jessica and I had already fallen in love with our family, and we stayed. And it was at that moment that both of us became a little bit more involved, especially me, in leadership and wanting to actually do something. And because if an individual like myself or Jessica, who grew up in church and felt that they weren't welcome in church just because of their sexual orientation or maybe their gender identity or even the color of their skin, didn't feel welcome, I wanted to change that, because I got to know my local church family and realized once again, there's a lot of folks who don't believe in the rules, right, that are created by them. And, so I wanted to see where I could be of assistance. And so I've sort of worked my way through leadership and have been serving as the lay leader now. I'm in my 2nd year in that post. And I'm very excited with the changes that I'm seeing. And, then when the special General Conference came down and dealt another blow, again, we cried in the kitchen. But this time I received phone calls from my fellow church members, my family, telling me how sorry they were that this happened and what could they do. And so you're seeing more of a movement and more of the family coming together, and it's so exciting. And so that's why I stay in it. That's why I got involved in it, because the church is important to both of us. And, as you probably heard, and I know Bishop Sue has said it and many other pastors have said it, church exists for people who are not yet there. And I truly believe that. And it's a refuge, but it's not a place anybody's going to want to come to if we have these barriers set up. And I'm there to help knock those barriers down.
Okay, thank you. And just really quick so that I can explain some terms and people that some of our viewers might not be familiar with. Bishop Sue is the bishop of the North Georgia Conference. The Book of Discipline is kind of like our book of laws and rules. It's kind of like a constitution, but we also have one of those. Um, and then UMC Next is kind of one of the progressive movements that's fighting for all sorts of equality in the UMC right now. But thank you for sharing that, Denise.
Absolutely, yes.
So, what are your hopes for the UMC that you want to see 5 years from now?
That's a pretty big question, but well, my true hope is that we can begin living into this idea of truly making the table big enough for everyone.
Mhm.
I believe that us turning back to missional work, even in our own backyard, even in the 10 feet around us, will help us to realize that. I'd also like to see the UMC in the next 5 years or moving towards is really focusing on embracing change. And I think the way we can do that, not only with issues surrounding human sexuality, but all the isms, is to focus on our youth and to really focus on building mentorship programs and leadership programs within the church. There are so many voices and ideas that I think go unheard. And when they're unheard, they leave. And so you've got folks who are leaving the church who are young because they're not being heard. And we have these issues and struggles that are going on with human sexuality and isms. But then you also have folks and people who maybe want to come into the church and they see not only our stances on certain issues where we're supposed to be loving Christian individuals, but we have all these rules and litmus tests about who can come into the church. They're not going to want to come in. But I truly believe that if the UMC focuses also on actually mentoring our youth and cultivating them for true leadership, and bringing in those ideas that they have because they're just bursting at the seams to want to be involved, I think that is going to be the best thing for the church. And I think it will help us get through some of the struggles that we have.
Okay. And I know that we are currently in quarantine and things are not going the way that anybody planned them to. And when I wrote this question, I thought that 2020 was going to be different. But what are you most excited about for in 2020?
Yeah, I saw somewhere that 2020 has been canceled and we're all getting there. So, um, I think that, look, I try to look for the silver lining in all this. And I do pray for those who are impacted by this and hope everybody is following the guidelines that are being put out by our officials to really lessen the curve with the COVID-19 virus. Some of the little things that I'm excited about is technology. I know a lot of churches are finally live streaming their services. I know that sounds sort of simple and maybe silly, but Decatur First United Methodist Church did our first live stream last Sunday, and it was great. And we did it largely in response to the virus, but we had so many of our older members who can no longer attend, who messaged in and were like, oh my gosh, thank you so much. I missed seeing this. I miss seeing my church. I miss seeing or being part of the service. So I'm excited about technology. I'm excited about us finally not being scared of it and maybe venturing in. And I think it sort of poses new opportunities for us to invite more people in. It could potentially be a vehicle for maybe individuals who are a little afraid of the UMC to check it out without physically having to go. It was a scary first day for Jessica and I, but some people are just too scared. And just hopefully, I'm also excited about just getting through the year. I think that I've talked with a lot of folks and various groups and movements within the United Methodist Church, with General Conference, which it sounds like it may be postponed. But everybody's excited about the change that is coming, the potential change. And it's a sad time in our church, but I think it's also a very positive time, or can be a positive time. And change can be scary, but change can be great. And we only grow stronger when we break, right? And when things break and when there's hurt, we can grow out of that adversity. And I think that's what we need to do, because actually I read one of the letters from Paul to the Romans last Sunday during the live stream, and that's what it was, is out of that adversity comes hope, and that hope builds character. And so I think that we are in that season, and I think we just all need to sort of pivot. And not because of the virus itself, I think it's sort of given us a chance to look at that. But I think within our own church we all need to pivot. The same conversations in the same way that we've been dealing with things doesn't seem to be working. And so I think if we all embrace love instead of fear and pivot, I think we're going to be just fine.
All right. Thank you. Okay, we're coming to about the end of our time. So is there anything else you would like to add or speak to before we wrap up?
Sure. I appreciate that. So, it's been an interesting time in the United Methodist Church. And as an openly gay woman, not only in my church community, but in my local community, in my professional community, I wear bow ties to court sometimes and the judges love it. But I get asked the question a lot, especially from the church perspective and folks who are not members of the church, why do you stay? They're hurting our people, they're hurting other people, they're homophobic, they're not being Christian. Why do you stay? And for anybody who's listening, I do always love to answer that question, because I stay because it's my family. I stay because I grew up in church, and I've come to know the love of Jesus Christ through my community and through the loving people there, and to remember that the individuals who maybe make the rules at the top are not necessarily the individuals that you're going to find at your local church. So I stay for people like me who grew up in church and desperately want to come back to church, but they're not sure. And so being there and showing them that it's okay is important. And I also stay for the individuals who have never set foot inside of a church and who maybe want to have that experience, but feel that the doors have been closed to them, whether that's figuratively or literally, that it's okay. And, if there's any help, maybe Elijah can post, some resources of where you can find a good community to worship with, because the United Methodist Church is full of individuals who are good, loving people, who are family. And that's why I stay. And I would invite anybody who's looking for a church home to check us out and come worship with us.
Yeah, that's one of our plans, kind of once we get this running, is to start giving out resources, just to find a good place for them to find a church home, or even resources on how you can kind of take the fight to these bodies, your annual conference and stuff
Absolutely.
like that, how to write legislation, how to get out there and,
I think
you
that's
know,
fantastic.
take a stand. So, thank you for talking about that. And that does bring us to the end of our time. I just want to remind everyone that you can find us at QLAG UMC on Facebook only for right now. I just want to thank you again, Denise, for sharing your story, your testimony, and just coming on and talking with me today.
It's been my pleasure. Thank you so much.
If you want to follow me on social media or find me, I'm at Elijah.show for _show. You should be able to find me on Twitter, also Instagram. Um, and my co-founder Riley. You can find him at Riley Standifer. But thank you everyone for joining us today for this April episode, and we will see you in May.